The first blow came with a suddenness that no one could have predicted. The human colony on Epsilon 9 had been a modest settlement, tucked away on the fringes of known space, dedicated to agriculture and research. No one expected it to be of strategic importance to the Vorthar. But to them, every human life was a potential threat, every human asset or resource that could be converted to their empire's growing power. The Vorthar, known for their cold, calculating brutality, didn't take chances. The attack came in the dead of night. A blinding flash lit up the skies above Epsilon 9. As a Vorthar battleship, the Vreshel's Wrath hovered ominously over the atmosphere. In mere moments, the colony's defenses were overwhelmed. The colony's communication network went dark as the Vorthar unleashed hell. Cities were reduced to ash in seconds. The sheer scale of the devastation was unprecedented. What had once been a bustling settlement now lay in ruins, a lifeless husk on a barren world. The inhabitants, hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children, never had a chance. There would be no survivors. It wasn't just the loss of life that sent shockwaves through Earth's leadership, but the methodical coldness with which the Vorthar had struck. This was not just an attack, it was a message. The Vorthar had deliberately targeted the weakest link, a colony too small to matter on its own. Yet they knew this would have global ramifications. The news of the attack rippled across Earth's networks, seeping into every home, every government office, and every military command center. The United Earth government had long declared neutrality in the Galactic War. Earth had witnessed the rise and fall of empires throughout history, and many believed that humanity's survival lay in staying out of intergalactic conflicts. But the horror of Epsilon 9 shattered that illusion. It was no longer about staying neutral. The human race had been forced into the fight, whether they were ready or not. The emergency sessions convened in Earth's capital, United Federation City, were unlike anything the planet had seen in over a century. The government was paralyzed at first. Debate raged over whether to respond with force or negotiate, whether to seek revenge or find a diplomatic solution. But the images from Epsilon 9, broadcast across the globe, left no room for doubt. It wasn't just a tragedy. It was an act of aggression on a scale that humanity could not ignore. The leader of the United Earth government, President Ilara Cross, addressed the world. Her face, resolute yet grieving, appeared on every screen. The Vorthar have crossed a line. This was not a mere attack. It was an act of war. No longer can we afford the luxury of neutrality. We will defend our people. We will defend our future, and we will never forget those we lost. The call for mobilization was immediate. The Earth's fleet, once a symbol of peacekeeping and exploration, was swiftly repurposed for war. Commanders and engineers who had only trained for humanitarian missions scrambled to adapt to the realities of galactic combat. Weapon systems were rushed into production. Soldiers, once trained in peacekeeping, now found themselves preparing for war on a scale they had never imagined. Humanity had been thrust into the maelstrom of galactic conflict, but they would not go quietly. Yet, as Earth began to prepare for retaliation, there was a sense that something was different about this fight. The people of Earth were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their very identity. The attack on Epsilon 9 had been a brutal reminder that humanity was still seen as weak, as a species to be dominated. But the fire ignited by that brutal assault would soon burn hotter than anyone expected. Humanity was ready to prove that it would never be the prey in this universe again. As Earth's forces scrambled to mobilize, no one fully understood the potential they were about to unleash. On paper, humanity's military might seem insignificant compared to the Vorthar's vast, technologically superior empire. Their ships were faster, their weapons far more powerful, and their soldiers had centuries of experience in galactic warfare. The Vorthar had crushed entire civilizations without even breaking a sweat. But in the quiet corners of Earth, something was stirring. Something that could tip the balance in ways no one had predicted. Humanity's advantage, as it turned out, was not in firepower or size. It was in their minds. Their capacity for adaptation, problem-solving and creativity was unparalleled, and it would become the weapon they would wield most effectively. Earth's military leaders recognized this immediately, while other species took a more traditional approach, favoring brute strength and overwhelming numbers. Humanity began to rethink what war could be. General Calla Draven, a battle-hardened officer with years of strategic experience, became one of the key figures in this shift. She had witnessed the devastating potential of the Vorthar firsthand, and she knew that humanity's best chance was not to try to outmatch them directly, but to outthink them. Technology alone won't win this, Draven often said to her staff in the days after the Epsilon 9 tragedy. The Vorthar are predictable. They're powerful, but they're also arrogant. They don't understand us, and that's going to be their downfall. While military engineers worked day and night to improve Earth's spacecraft and weaponry, Draven pushed for a different kind of warfare, a blend of unconventional tactics, adaptive strategy, and the use of advanced artificial intelligence, AI, to guide them. Earth's tech firms, which had once focused on everything from communications to artificial agriculture, quickly repurposed their resources into developing military-grade AI systems that could anticipate enemy movements and even predict battlefield outcomes. These systems could analyze vast amounts of data in real time, allowing Earth's commanders to always be one step ahead. It was here that humanity's true edge began to emerge. While the Vorthar relied on overwhelming force and brute strength, they had never considered the possibility that their adversaries might be able to predict their actions with pinpoint accuracy. Earth's AI didn't just process data, it learned and adapted faster than the Vorthar could adjust their strategies. The AI could anticipate everything from ship movements to attack patterns, providing Earth's commanders with an almost supernatural ability to predict and counter every Vorthar tactic. The human fleet, still outnumbered, was now equipped with advanced stealth technology and hyper-efficient energy shields that baffled the Vorthar. The Vorthar had always relied on their ability to overwhelm an opponent with raw power and speed, but they had never encountered an adversary that could slip past their defenses with such precision. The first battle after Earth's forces had mobilized, which took place in the shadow of the gas giant Dalros, proved just how unprepared the Vorthar were for what humanity had developed. Their scouts, confident in their ability to track Earth's forces, found themselves bewildered as human ships evaded detection time and time again. Earth's ships were not only harder to track, they seemed to anticipate every movement the Vorthar made. The AI systems, which had been trained on historical battles, tactical analysis, and predictive algorithms, advised Draven to employ a strategy that defied conventional expectations. Instead of clashing head-on with the Vorthar fleet, Earth's forces employed a strategy of hit-and-run tactics, ambushing vulnerable vessels and taking out high-priority targets before retreating into the shadows of Dalros moons. The Vorthar, accustomed to attacking in massive waves, struggled to respond to the agile, elusive Earth forces. Every time they thought they had the humans cornered, they would disappear again, leaving only chaos in their wake. It wasn't just military technology that gave Earth an edge. It was how the humans used it. They fought with a combination of intelligence, resourcefulness, and a willingness to do whatever it took to win. The Vorthar had underestimated humanity, believing that their strength was all that was needed. Now, humanity was teaching them the hard way that victory wasn't just about sheer power. It was about understanding the enemy, using your mind, and adapting faster than they could react. By the time the battle was over, the Vorthar had lost 2/3 of their fleet in Dalros orbit. They were not used to such a loss, especially not at the hands of a species they had once considered beneath them. The tides of war had begun to shift, and Earth had, in a matter of hours, proven that they were no longer the prey. They were the hunters. The quiet before the storm on Dalros was unlike anything Earth's forces had ever experienced. The gas giant loomed large in the distance, its swirling storms a stark contrast to the tense calm among the human fleet. General Draven, standing on the command deck of the UES Resolute, gazed out at the expanse of space, a sea of uncertainty stretching before her. The Vorthar were closing in fast. Their scouts had identified the fleet, and their numbers vastly outmatched humanity's forces. Yet something had changed in the air. The humans were no longer intimidated. They were ready. As the Vorthar fleet entered Dalros' orbit, their colossal ships appeared like harbingers of doom, sleek, armored, and brimming with firepower. The Vreshel's Wrath, their flagship, hung ominously among them, a floating behemoth armed with weapons that could obliterate entire cities in a single strike. The Vorthar had no reason to fear the humans. They had fought countless species across the galaxy and had never been bested. But then came the human fleet, a force smaller, yet far more mobile and unpredictable. Commander Draven had strategically placed Earth's ships in the asteroid field surrounding Dalros, where their eye-guided stealth systems could exploit the terrain. The Vorthar had made the fatal mistake of underestimating how well humans knew their own weaknesses, and they'd overestimated their ability to dominate a force they couldn't fully understand. The first move came from the humans, not with a barrage of fire, but with calculated precision. The human fleet, hidden in the shadows of asteroids, launched a series of small, stealthy drones equipped with EMP devices, designed to disable the Vorthar's advanced shield systems. The drones swarmed the largest of the Vorthar ships, silently infiltrating their perimeter. The first strike was swift, and it hit the Vreshel's Wrath hard. Its shields flickered, then failed completely as the EMPs overwhelmed its defenses. A momentary vulnerability, but it was enough. The Vorthar flagship was suddenly exposed. Without its shields, the ship was a massive, slow-moving target. Human forces wasted no time in exploiting the breach. Earth's fleet, having anticipated this very moment, fired a coordinated volley of long-range plasma missiles, each one aimed with the kind of precision that could only be achieved through their advanced AI systems. The missiles ripped into the Vreshel's Wrath, sending shockwaves throughout the surrounding ships. Explosions tore through its hull as its weapon systems went offline. For the first time in the war, the Vorthar flagship was in danger. In the chaos, the Vorthar tried to retaliate, launching a desperate counterattack with their smaller, more agile ships. But human tactics were already one step ahead. The Resolute, along with its sister ships, employed hit-and-run tactics that confused the Vorthar at every turn. Using the asteroid field to mask their movements, the humans made precise strikes on key ships, disabling weapon systems or targeting weak points. The Vorthar, unable to adapt to the unpredictability and speed of their attackers, were caught in a trap they hadn't anticipated. General Draven, watching from her command chair, felt the weight of the moment. Her AI systems had predicted the Vorthar's response, but she had doubted its success. She had never believed the war would turn so quickly in humanity's favor. But as she watched Vorthar ships falter under the assault, a small flicker of hope began to stir. "We've got them," Draven said, almost to herself. But she knew this wasn't a victory yet. The Vorthar were not going to retreat easily. They would throw everything they had at humanity to reclaim their dominance. And they did. The Vorthar fleet, now desperate, attempted to regroup and retaliate with everything they had left. The battle intensified, and the Vorthar sent wave after wave of reinforcements. But Earth's fleet had the advantage of knowing how to adapt. With the Vorthar distracted by the surprise strike on their flagship, the humans continued to dismantle their forces with frightening efficiency. When the dust finally settled, the result was undeniable. The Vorthar had lost nearly half of their fleet. At least a dozen of their most advanced warships lay in ruin. The Vreshel's Wrath had been heavily damaged and forced to retreat, a symbol of their once unshakable confidence now shattered. On the other side, Earth's losses had been minimal. For the first time in the war, the galaxy was forced to acknowledge humanity's presence. The Vorthar had not only been pushed back, they had been humiliated. It had taken less than 5 hours for humanity to do what many thought was impossible: turn the tide of battle and deliver a message that would resonate across the stars. The war was far from over, But the outcome of Dalros had proven one undeniable truth. Humanity had a place in this galaxy, and it would no longer be dismissed as weak prey. The shockwave of humanity's unexpected victory at Dalros rippled through the galaxy. The Vorthar, accustomed to overwhelming force and swift, decisive victories, found themselves questioning everything they knew about war. They had expected a quick annihilation of Earth's forces, but what they had encountered was something different. A species that, despite being outgunned and outnumbered, had turned their entire strategy on its head. It wasn't just the technology. It was the way humans fought, the unpredictable and creative strategies they employed that threw even the most battle-hardened commanders into disarray. General Draven knew that the victory at Dalros, though significant, was just the beginning. If humanity was to fully resist the Vorthar, they needed to step up their game. Dalros had been an opening salvo, a message. But the Vorthar were not the type to back down after a single loss. They would adapt, evolve, and come at Earth with everything they had. The next phase of the war had to be decisive. Draven had already anticipated that the Vorthar would change their tactics, but she had a trick of her own to deploy, one that would take them completely by surprise. Earth's military engineers had been working on an entirely new weapon, one that could potentially turn the tide of war in a single stroke. The secret project, known only to the highest-ranking officials, was a weapon that could counter the Vorthar's most dangerous asset, their vast, nearly invincible warships. These ships had been the cornerstone of their empire, and as long as they remained intact, the Vorthar would never back down. Humanity needed to disable them from within, and that's where the new strategy came in. The solution was simple, if dangerous. Autonomous drones. These weren't just any drones, though. They were designed to infiltrate enemy vessels at close range and sabotage their systems from the inside. Using advanced stealth technology, these drones could bypass the most sophisticated detection systems, giving humanity the upper hand even in the most perilous of situations. They could infiltrate not just external systems, but the very heart of a ship, its engines, weapons, and communication networks. The drones would be the perfect weapon to neutralize the Vorthar's technological superiority without direct confrontation. For this plan to succeed, however, the timing had to be perfect. General Draven instructed the fleet to prepare for another engagement, this time near the edge of the Zarnak system, a vital sector that the Vorthar had fortified heavily. Their forces here were numerous, and their defenses were formidable. But the humans knew that they had the element of surprise, and they intended to exploit it. As Earth's fleet advanced into the system, Draven gave the signal. The drones, each about the size of a small shuttle, launched from their concealed positions within the fleet. The Vorthar had no idea what was coming. The drones moved silently through space, using the dense asteroid field surrounding the Zarnak system to cover their approach. As they neared the Vorthar flagship, the Vreshel's Wrath, the very symbol of the Empire's power, the drones activated their cloaking systems, becoming nearly invisible to the enemy scanners. It took only minutes before the first drone slipped inside the flagship's hull, bypassing its shields and infiltrating the heart of the ship. The other drones followed suit, silently penetrating every major ship in the Vorthar fleet. Once inside, they set to work, planting devices designed to disable key systems, engines, weapons, and most importantly, the communication networks that allowed the Vorthar to coordinate their attacks. From the command deck of the UES Resolute, Draven watched as her fleet prepared for the next phase of the battle. The Vorthar would soon realize that their ships were no longer under their control. As the minutes ticked by, Earth's forces moved into position, ready to capitalize on the chaos that would soon unfold. The first sign of success came when a wave of confusion spread across the Vorthar ships. Their engines sputtered and failed, their weapons went offline, and their commanders struggled to communicate. The Vreshel's Wrath, which had been their strongest asset, was suddenly paralyzed, its once imposing silhouette now powerless and drifting helplessly in space. In the span of just a few minutes, the entire Vorthar fleet had been thrown into disarray. Draven gave the command to strike. Earth's fleet, now aware of the Vorthar's vulnerability, launched a brutal assault. With the Vorthar unable to communicate effectively or mount a coherent defense, the human ships tore through the fleet with unrelenting precision. The Vorthar, masters of warfare for millennia, were now reduced to scrambling to defend themselves against an enemy they couldn't even comprehend. The battle was over in hours. The Vorthar, who had once seemed invincible, were left reeling, their fleet shattered and their flagship incapacitated. The tactical brilliance of the human forces, combined with their daring, innovative use of autonomous drones, had rendered the Vorthar's technological advantage useless. It was a victory that would shake the galaxy. Earth had proven once again that it was not a force to be underestimated. With every battle, humanity's reputation as an unpredictable, resourceful, and formidable power was cemented further. But Draven knew this war was far from over. The Vorthar would not surrender easily. But in the depths of space, humanity had just demonstrated its power. Power that could not be crushed, no matter how hard the galaxy's most ruthless empire tried. The victory at Zarnak sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Earth's bold, unorthodox strategy had crippled the Vorthar's most powerful fleet, a blow that reverberated throughout their entire empire. For the first time in millennia, the Vorthar were on the defensive, their confidence shattered. But the Vorthar were nothing if not resilient, and their response was swift and devastating. General Draven had anticipated this. The Vorthar would not take defeat lying down. They would unleash everything they had to reclaim their supremacy. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about maintaining their place as the galaxy's dominant force. And for that, they would need to crush humanity once and for all. 2 weeks after the Battle of Zarnak, the first signs of retaliation began to emerge. Vorthar warships, larger and more heavily armed than anything Earth had encountered before, began to gather in the Varlock Nebula, a remote system known for its treacherous, densely packed asteroid fields. This location was perfect for the Vorthar, an isolated corner of space where they could prepare without interference. Earth's intelligence networks quickly caught wind of the massing forces, but the sheer scale of the threat was still difficult to comprehend. The Vorthar, it seemed, had learned from their earlier mistakes. They had gone back to their roots, overwhelming force. This new fleet, led by the Vreshel's Wrath, repaired, refitted, and more dangerous than ever, was an armada unlike anything humanity had ever faced. It dwarfed any fleet Earth had ever fielded, and it was now heading toward the heart of the human-held territories. General Draven convened an emergency war council aboard the UES Resolute. Every commander, strategist, and officer from across Earth's fleet gathered, awaiting her orders. Draven's mind was racing as she surveyed the intelligence reports. The Vorthar had learned, and they were now prepared to crush humanity with a single decisive blow. Prepare for their counterattack. We need to keep our ships in the outer rim of the system and use the asteroid fields to our advantage again. They won't expect us to fight back with the same strategy, so we'll need to be unpredictable, Draven said, her voice calm but full of urgency. Earth's fleet, much smaller in size than the advancing Vorthar armada, would need to rely on guerrilla tactics once again. The drones that had been so successful at Zarnak would be deployed again, but this time, Earth's forces would face a far more formidable foe. The Vorthar had already begun reinforcing their ships with advanced countermeasures designed specifically to detect and destroy any drone that came too close. The next few days were filled with frantic preparations. Engineers worked tirelessly to upgrade Earth's drone technology, improving their stealth systems and ensuring that their EMP devices could neutralize the Vorthar's enhanced defenses. But as the humans readied themselves for battle, a deep sense of foreboding settled over the fleet. The scale of the enemy's forces was overwhelming, and there was no doubt that the Vorthar would come in full force. As the two fleets drew closer to the Varlock Nebula, the tension was palpable. Commander Maris Tanaka, one of Earth's brightest tacticians, surveyed the battlefield from her station aboard the UES Vanguard. "We have one shot at this," she said to Draven. "If we don't succeed in neutralizing their flagship again, this entire region of the galaxy will fall under Vorthar control. And if that happens, we won't be able to fight them off." Draven nodded grimly, her mind spinning through potential strategies. "We won't let that happen. We'll make them bleed. We'll use everything we have." The first clash occurred when Earth's fleet emerged from the asteroid fields and engaged the Vorthar armada. Unlike previous battles, this time there were no surprises for the Vorthar. The sheer number of ships and firepower they brought to bear was overwhelming. The opening volley from their warships sent shockwaves through space, but Earth's fleet was agile, moving like shadows through the asteroid debris. The first wave of drones was deployed, and Earth's fleet used the chaos of battle to slip in and out of Vorthar formation, targeting weak points and trying to destabilize the fleet. The Resolute was on the front lines, its laser cannons and missile systems lighting up the dark void of space. The Vorthar retaliated fiercely, their weapons hitting Earth's ships with deadly precision. But this time, the Vorthar had accounted for Earth's stealth tactics. Their ships, equipped with new sensor technology, began to pick off Earth's drones with deadly efficiency. The first wave of sabotage was neutralized. And yet, as Earth's forces regrouped and pulled back, there was a sudden shift. A new wave of humanity's drones appeared from another vector, exploiting the weakness in the Vorthar's defenses. General Draven realized something important in that moment. The Vorthar were adapting. But so were the humans. Every time the Vorthar countered one move, humanity found a way to outsmart them. The battle would be long and grueling, but Earth was not retreating. They were learning faster than the Vorthar ever could have imagined. The outcome of the battle remained uncertain, but one thing was clear: Earth would never back down. The fight for survival had become a battle of will, intelligence, and sheer determination. And the Vorthar were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their weapons, it was in their refusal to lose. The battle in the Varlock Nebula raged on, a brutal clash between two forces, each determined to prove their superiority. Humanity, though still outnumbered and outgunned, had already shown that they could push back against the seemingly invincible Vorthar. But as the battle escalated, General Draven knew that time was running out. Earth's fleet was becoming battered, and the Vorthar's relentless pursuit was beginning to take its toll. If they didn't land a decisive blow soon, the entire human resistance could be crushed. The Vorthar, now fully aware of humanity's capabilities, had shifted their tactics, pulling together their full might for a final, overwhelming push. The Vreshel's Wrath, their flagship, was at the center of the onslaught, its immense weapon systems capable of wiping out entire fleets in a single shot. But there was a vulnerability in their arrogance. The Vorthar had underestimated the one thing they couldn't anticipate: human persistence. Draven stood on the command deck of the UES Resolute, her hands clenched on the edge of the console. The bridge was alive with activity. Officers barking commands, ships engaged in intense maneuvers, and the hum of weapons systems charging up for the next engagement. The battle had descended into chaos, a swirling maelstrom of explosions and debris, as Earth's forces fought for every inch of space. But despite the relentless pressure from the Vorthar, Draven refused to show fear. Her eyes were sharp, her mind always moving ahead to the next step. "Status report," she called out, her voice cutting through the noise. Commander Tanaka turned from her station, her face tense but resolute. "We've lost 3 cruisers, General. Several other ships are heavily damaged. The Vorthar are using coordinated wave attacks. They're adapting faster than we expected." Draven nodded. The Vorthar were relentless, and their numbers were starting to overwhelm humanity's defenses. But there was still one advantage Earth had: speed. They could move faster, strike harder, and most importantly, think faster than the Vorthar could react. The key now was to strike at the heart of the Vorthar fleet, Vreshel's Wrath, and disable it for good. "We'll need to disrupt their command structure," Draven said, eyes narrowing as she scanned the battlefield. "Tanaka, get our best ships into position. We're going after the flagship." The plan was risky, perhaps even suicidal. The Vreshel's Wrath was heavily shielded, its advanced weapon systems capable of reducing anything in its path to atoms. But Draven knew that if they didn't take down the flagship, the Vorthar would only escalate their efforts, pushing Earth's fleet to the brink of collapse. The human ships quickly regrouped, breaking away from the main line of battle. Under the cover of the nebula's dense asteroid fields, they moved like phantoms, closing in on the Vreshel's Wrath. Draven's heart raced as she watched the fleet position itself for the final push. It was a gamble, but it was their only shot that couldn't allow the Vorthar to regain their momentum. "Prepare for strike formation," Draven ordered. Her plan was simple: use the stealth drones once again, but this time with a twist. Instead of targeting the ship's external systems, the drones would infiltrate the Vreshel's Wrath directly, planting sabotage devices within its core. They would bypass the ship's shields, using the asteroid debris as cover to get close enough to plant their charges. The fleet advanced. In the eerie quiet of space, the Resolute led the charge, its guns silent for now, relying solely on its speed and agility. As Earth's ships approached, the Vorthar began to react. They could see the ships closing in, but their sensors were distorted by the dense asteroid field. The Vreshel's Wrath began to turn, its massive guns swiveling into position, but it was too late. The first wave of drones launched, streaking toward the flagship like missiles. The Vorthar reacted swiftly, but the drones were too fast, weaving through the asteroid field, their cloaking systems making them invisible to the Vorthar's enhanced sensors. The Vreshel's Wrath's defensive weapons fired into the empty void, missing the drones by mere meters. Then, a flash. The first explosion detonated within the heart of the Vreshel's Wrath, a shockwave rippling through the massive ship. The flagship's engines faltered, its shields flickering. Another round of explosions followed, each one disrupting critical systems. The Vreshel's Wrath was taking hits it could not recover from. The Vorthar flagship, their symbol of power, was crumbling under the precise, relentless assault. The Vorthar, now realizing the extent of the sabotage, scrambled to regroup. But it was too late. Earth's fleet had already closed in, launching a brutal final strike against the now crippled Vreshel's Wrath. Explosions rocked the flagship as human ships tore into its hull. The Vorthar's desperate counterattack was no match for the coordinated, intelligent strikes from the humans. As the Vreshel's Wrath finally broke apart, Draven allowed herself a brief moment of relief. The flagship, the heart of the Vorthar's war effort, was gone. The tide had turned once again. But the war was far from over. The destruction of the flagship had thrown the Vorthar into disarray, but they were not a species that gave up easily. Earth's victory had shaken them, but their fury would be unimaginable. The battle had been won, but the war, now more than ever, was on the knife's edge. In the wake of their victory, Earth's fleet was left battered but resolute. The destruction of the Vreshel's Wrath, the flagship of the Vorthar Empire, had dealt a blow that no one had thought possible. For the first time, the Vorthar were on the back foot, their command structure shattered and their morale crushed. Humanity had done what no other species in the galaxy had dared to do: strike at the heart of the Vorthar's might and cripple it. But Draven knew better than to let her victory cloud her judgment. She stood in her command chair aboard the UES Resolute, staring at the flickering holographic map of the galaxy displayed before her. The victory had shifted the balance of power in the galaxy, but it was only a momentary reprieve. The Vorthar were a dangerous, relentless species, and their loss of a flagship would not keep them from retaliating. There would be more attacks, more strategies to counter, and more bloodshed. Humanity had shown its strength, but the war was far from over. "We have them on the run, General," Commander Tanaka said, her voice tinged with cautious optimism as she entered the command deck. "But they won't stay down for long. We need to press the advantage while we can." Draven nodded, her gaze still fixed on the galaxy map. Yes, but we have to be careful. The Vorthar will rebuild quickly, and if we overextend ourselves, we risk losing everything. Earth's victory had sent ripples across the galaxy, and soon, more systems that had long been under Vorthar occupation had started to show signs of rebellion. Humanity's unexpected strength had inspired many of the galaxy's subjugated species to rise up. It was as if a spark had been ignited, and now there was hope where before there had been none. Draven's thoughts turned to Earth's allies, those who had not yet committed to the fight. The Confederation of Systems, a loose collection of star systems with no central government, had remained neutral up to this point. Earth's victory at Zarnak and the destruction of the Vreshel's wrath might be enough to change their stance, but Draven knew that convincing the Confederation to take action was a delicate matter. They would need time and tact to persuade the neutral systems to join the war. As Earth's forces pulled back from the edge of the Varlock Nebula, taking stock of their damage, the silence in the command deck was palpable. It was rare for anyone to feel truly secure in the aftermath of a victory, and Draven could sense the wariness in the air. But even in the face of uncertainty, there was a shared understanding among the crew, a bond forged in battle. The Resolute had seen its fair share of losses, but it had proven itself time and again. Humanity had proven itself. Status of the fleet? Draven asked, her voice steady but firm. Tanaka tapped a few buttons on her console and looked up. We've sustained heavy damage to the outer hulls, and several key systems are down, but we're functional. Our drones are still in working order, and we gathered valuable intel on the Vorthar's remaining forces. Draven gave a quiet nod. Good. We're not out of the woods yet. The Vorthar might be reeling, but they won't hesitate to retaliate. We need to strengthen our alliances and prepare for their next move. As the days passed, Earth's fleet began a strategic withdrawal, pulling back to safer territories to lick their wounds and regroup. It was not the retreat of a beaten army, but the calculated move of a force that understood the cost of war. Earth's allies had begun to make contact, with several systems now requesting military aid to overthrow their Vorthar oppressors. Draven knew that the key to victory was not just in defeating the Vorthar, but in ensuring that humanity wasn't fighting this war alone. Behind the scenes, diplomats and strategists worked tirelessly to negotiate with the Confederation of Systems. With the tide turning in favor of humanity, there was a growing belief that the galaxy could be liberated from the Vorthar's iron grip. But it was not going to be easy. The Vorthar, though wounded, were not going to give up their dominance without a fight. They would come back with new strategies, new alliances, and new weapons. And when they did, Earth would need to be ready. For now, there was a quiet that fell over the fleet, a brief moment of respite before the next storm. But as Draven gazed out at the stars, she knew that calm was only temporary. The next phase of the war was already taking shape. The galaxy had changed, and humanity had proven it could play on the same level as the galaxy's most powerful empires. But the question that lingered in the air was clear. Could humanity maintain its momentum? Could they rally the galaxy behind them and finish what they had started? The storm was coming again, and this time, humanity was ready for it. The silence that had followed Earth's initial victory was short-lived. In the weeks that followed, the Vorthar regrouped, their military machinery reassembling with terrifying speed. Intelligence reports indicated that their remaining warlords, scattered after the fall of the Vreshel's wrath, had begun to unite under a new leader, High Commander Tsarek, a brutal strategist and merciless tactician known for his ruthless efficiency. He had already begun to consolidate forces, rallying loyalists from across the galaxy and bringing in mercenaries to bolster his numbers. The stage was set for a final, catastrophic confrontation. General Draven knew that Earth could not afford to wait for the Vorthar to strike first. Humanity had been given a chance, an opportunity to break the Vorthar's hold over the galaxy, but it was a fleeting one. Now, every decision would determine the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. The UES Resolute was at the forefront of the final offensive. Earth's fleet, bolstered by new allies from the Confederation of Systems, had gathered in the shadow of a distant star system. Their forces were greater than ever before, but so were the stakes. The Vorthar had learned from their past defeats, and they would not make the same mistakes again. Sarek was known for his ability to predict enemy movements with unnerving accuracy, and he had already begun moving his fleet into position, preparing for the decisive engagement. "We can't afford to let them dictate the pace," Draven said as she stood in front of her command crew. "We know how they fight. We know their weaknesses. This is our moment. We end this war now." The plan was simple: strike fast, hit hard, and cripple the Vorthar fleet before they could fully assemble. Draven and her officers had analyzed the remaining strength of the Vorthar, and they identified a critical vulnerability. Sarek's flagship, the Korza, was in a weakened state after a series of recent skirmishes. If they could disable it, the Vorthar fleet would lose its command structure, and with it, any hope of rallying to a single unified force. Commander Tanaka had the task of coordinating the strike force. The Resolute would lead the charge, supported by Earth's allies and the fleet of drones that had proven so effective in earlier engagements. The plan was to use the dense asteroid field of the Iran system as cover, allowing Earth's forces to close in without detection. "We'll catch them off guard," Tanaka said, her voice steady with conviction. "We hit Sarek's flagship hard, take out their command, and the rest of their fleet will fall apart." As the ships prepared for the final assault, the tension aboard the Resolute was palpable. Crew members moved swiftly, executing drills and checks. Draven stood in front of the massive viewport, watching the stars streak past as the fleet moved into position. Her mind was calm, but she could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. This was the endgame. The war would either be won or lost here. The fleet emerged from the asteroid field with the full force of Earth's might behind it. The Vorthar had anticipated the attack, however, and their warships were already moving into defensive formations. Sarek's flagship loomed ahead, its menacing form dwarfing the smaller ships that surrounded it. The first wave of drone strikes launched, their EMP bursts designed to disrupt the Vorthar's energy shields and weapon systems. But the Vorthar were prepared, their countermeasures activating in an instant. Earth's drones were swiftly intercepted, but the damage had been done. Sarek's flagship was momentarily exposed. Draven issued the order, and the fleet moved in. The Resolute was the first to open fire, its cannons roaring as they slammed into the Korza. A series of explosions racked the flagship's hull, and for a moment, the Vorthar fleet faltered. The first wave of human ships followed up with coordinated missile strikes, targeting the Korza's propulsion systems. It was a critical moment. The flagship was on the verge of losing power. But Sarek, ever the strategist, wasn't about to give up without a fight. He retaliated fiercely, directing his fleet's weapons at the Resolute and its allies. The battle became a brutal exchange of fire, with Earth's fleet fighting tooth and nail to maintain the upper hand. For an hour, the battle raged, each side pushing back with everything they had. The Resolute dodged plasma fire, returning devastating blasts that sent shockwaves through the Vorthar ships. Meanwhile, Commander Tanaka's forces took advantage of the confusion, maneuvering around the flanks of the Vorthar fleet and targeting their vulnerable points. The Korza took another direct hit, this time to its command bridge, sending a tremor through the Vorthar's forces. As Sarek scrambled to regain control, Earth's forces closed in for the final assault. With one last barrage, Draven's fleet tore into the heart of the flagship. The Korza exploded in a brilliant flash of light, its once mighty form disintegrating in an instant. The loss of their flagship sent the Vorthar into disarray. Their ships, once a unified force, began to break apart as command faltered. The remnants of the fleet scattered in all directions, fleeing in panic. The war was over. Draven stood silent, her heart pounding as the final wave of the Vorthar's empire collapsed. The galaxy was free. Humanity had won. The war, which had seemed impossible just months before, had ended in an improbable victory. As the surviving ships of Earth's fleet drifted through the remains of the battlefield, a cheer erupted on the command deck. Earth had not only survived but had triumphed. And in that moment, Draven knew the galaxy would never forget the day when humanity, against all odds, had defeated the Vorthar and changed the fate of the stars forever.